Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vool. And in this video we're editing some terrain STLs to give you some more unique options. So War Scenery have got a new Kickstarter out and I always really like their stuff. You can see some of the things that they've got on the screen at the moment, including these HAB units and various options, and I thought I'd use them to talk through how we can modify some terrain just using Blender and what we can do with it. So we're going to do a few different things, but we're going to focus mostly on some wall sections, and we're going to have a look at what we can do with them. Now, if you are interested in the Kickstarter, there's a link in the description. It's not an affiliate link in anywhere. I don't think you can even do that for Kickstarter. But if you want to have a look at the Kickstarter and what they offer, or if you're just interested in some of the other things they produce, they've got their website and you can check the things out there. So for this, we're going to be having a look at some of these wall sections. Now for this, I asked for a version without the debris on it, just because it made it easy to show some of these things off. I'm not sure if they're going to be actually part of the Kickstarter without the debris at the front, but I thought it was a good way to show you some of the things that we can do here. Now before we get into this further, I did actually check with War Scenery that they're okay with me making this video and editing their STLs, but I'd always think it's really polite to just check with the designer that they're okay with you doing this, as some would rather not have their designs modified. Now with that done, what I'm going to do is look at two of these wall sections, so we're just going to drag them into Blender, import the STLs, and they're going to be somewhere. This often happens in Blender where bringing things in, so just go to your object outliner, click on one of the objects, and hit the decimal place on your number pad. That should bring you to them, and then we're going to go Object, Set Origin, and Origin to Geometry, and do that for each one. So Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry, and you can see that's moved this blue dot if you haven't used Blender before, and that's basically like the center, or where Blender considers the center of the object to be for certain functions, and we'll use that a little bit later and talk how to manipulate it. Then I'm going to select both of them, Shift and S, and we're going to move selected to the 3D cursor, which is at the 0, 0 point, and then we can just, with one of them selected, once again press the full stop, and we're back at the 3D cursor, which is useful if we're bringing in new objects, because we always bring them in at the cursor. So let's just G to move this one, and then we're going to hit Y to move it on the Y-axis, and we're going to start modifying these objects. Now, I'm going to do three things with this. We're going to have a look at how we can remove some iconography, so I'm going to get rid of this symbol here, just because, well, I might not want that, or I might want to put a different icon on this instead. We're going to have a look at how we can join multiples of these things together, and we'll talk about that in a couple of ways, and because these have got some extra bits here that they use for actually joining the 3D prints, which is a really nice setup, but we're going to talk about how we can deal with that, and then we're going to have a look at adding some additional damage to these. So let's start with getting rid of this icon. Now, the first thing, if I hit Tab and go into vertex mode, you'll notice I've got this pie menu. This is part of Machine Tools if you haven't used Blender before, or you haven't got this add-on. And essentially, if you hit Tab, you go into Edit mode and it's up here, and you can go to Vertex, Edge, or Face mode, and they show different things. For example, vertex mode, and you can just hit 1 to get in this, as well as coming up here, shows all the vertices, so that's all the points individually. The edges allow you to select all the edges, which are what connects two vertices together, and then face mode selects the faces. And you can get to that with 1, 2, and 3, or up in the corner, but I've got Machine Tools, and that gives you this pie menu, which should really clearly show you what I'm going to. So I'm going to go to Edge mode, just for now, and we're going to clean this up a bit, because you often get these triangles on STLs, and if this is a perfectly flat object, we don't need a lot of these, and it just makes things a little bit more messy. So all I'm going to do is hit A, and then I'm going to hit X, and we're going to do a limited dissolve. Now that is going to get rid of all of those extra lines that we don't want, but you'll see this has done this up to a 5-degree angle, which if you've got certain really small objects, so for example this skull here, this can mess this up a bit. So I'm going to put that down to 0.5, and we're back to closer to the original geometry, but we've got everything still being nice and clean. Now what we're going to do at this point is start getting rid of these. So what we need to do is select all of this and get rid of it, but we're going to do this in a little bit more of an efficient way. Now firstly, we're going to have a look where there are some of these lines that this action didn't get rid of, so we can see all these edges here. So I'm just going to select those and press Ctrl and X to dissolve them, and that should get rid of the ones that Blender can get rid of without causing a problem. And we've got a few more here, so I'm just going to look side on, so I'm just scrolling in to do this, and we can have a look where the edge is. Sometimes it's easier from the inside, So we can move inside our object. We can go into X-ray mode with Shift and Z, and I'm just going to select those, Control and X, and then there, and then there, and that should be good to go. So a little bit of cleanup is quite useful. It just makes things easier to manipulate. We've got the same thing on the bottom here, and this is to do with how Blender Booleaned everything together. So let's just get rid of most of those. So Control and X, and Control and X, but I'm trying to keep the one that's on the corner just there. So we want to, again, make sure we don't deal with any ones that don't have flat edges. So just there, Control and X, there we go, and that looks fine. So instead of selecting all of the outer edge of this, which would take a long time, I'm going to basically create a section and cut this off. So I'm going to hit K to bring up the knife tool, and we're going to go from here to there. Basically, all the bits that will encompass this shape. Hit spacebar and got that confirmed. We need to do the same thing on the other side. So K, all the way down there, and then space. And you can see I haven't quite finished cleaning up this bit. I should probably do that now. This will actually help this. We can see this a bit more easily with that edge. So Control and X, and then here, same thing. Oh, and that's messed up my knife cut slightly. So let's just K, click, there, and then space. Now this is going to make it much quicker and easier to select this whole object. What I'm going to do is go into edge mode, and then I'm just going to hold down Shift and click all of the edges up to the point where I'm surrounding the object or the part that we want to get rid of. So I've just gone there. Oh, and you can see here, this hasn't quite connected, so I'm going to have to click there as well. If you go into vertex mode, there's an extra vertex there. But that's not really a problem as long as you keep an eye on it. Then we're just going to go to selection and select loop, and we're going to select the inner region. That selects everything on the inside, and then X and delete the faces. So that's deleted everything, and now we've only got this outside bit. This now becomes really easy, but I'm going to go into vertex mode and do a little bit of cleanup. This bit and this bit and this one we don't want. Well, we want this one, but we don't want these two. So I can select those vertices and Control and X, and that will dissolve then. We don't want this one here as well. So same thing, except for it's not going to like that because we've got two edges going to this section in the middle, and anytime there's something that breaks a face, so this object that's just here breaks this face, you need to have two lines coming off of it. So all we're going to do is move this one to this corner. So I'm going to click, shift click, M, and merge at last. So the last one we clicked on is what it goes to. And we'll do the same over here. Click, shift click, M, and then at last. And then, oh, there's still one there, there, M, and then at last. There were two vertices on top of each other. This should allow us to go into edge mode, select here, and then just hit F, and Blender will guess where the next edge goes, which is correct. It always tries to make quads. So we could do that again. Oh, there must be two vertices on top of each other here. There we go. So once again, in vertex mode, click, shift click, M, and then at last. So you can always tell when this doesn't work and whether you've got a problem to deal with. So once again, F, and then F again. And this has all been connected together. So there we go. We've got rid of this icon. Really easy. Now, that just gives you the option of potentially bringing in new icons. I've got some icons that are created from other places. So for example, we could do something like that and add that to our fortification walls if we wanted to. I'm just going to delete that for now, but you can see why we'd do this. Now, we want to do the same thing here. Now, we got a couple of ways of doing this. We could do it in exactly the same method, or if we've got this point, the origin dead center, what we can do is mirror this across. Now, what I'm going to do to make sure this works is go to face mode, select that face, and then we're going to shift and S, and I'm going to move my cursor to the selected, so just there. Now it's now on that face, and then we can go to object mode, object, set origin, and origin to 3D cursor. And this will allow us to mirror across the origin, or we could do it across the cursor, but it's easier to do it on the origin. So I can come to the modifier properties, add a modifier, type in mirror. We want a mirror modifier, and at the moment it's mirroring along the X, so actually we've done something quite interesting and make this wider. Let's turn that off. We want to mirror across the Y, so I'm going to hit Y, and you can see that this, if we just unselect it, has mirrored the wrong way. So I'm just going to click bisect first and then flip, and you can see we've now got that, though we have lost those two interesting little bits there. So that is how we've mirrored this at this point. So we've got this one ready to go. Now, if we want to apply this, because at the moment this is all a modifier, we are going to need to apply this, and to do that, we're just going to click and apply. Now, we could do the same thing here as well, just to get rid of that iconography, but that's entirely up to you. Next, let's join these together, and we've got a few ways of doing this. So, first of all, we need to get rid of any hollows that this is going to create. So I'm going to go into Edge mode again, and I'm going to select this section here. So select and then Shift select around, and we can use basically the same trick with a few differences. Select loops, and select inner loop region, and if I hold Control and hit X, that's going to dissolve that, and Blender works out, well, yes, there's a flat face here, so we want to get rid of this. So that's our first option. The other way we could do this, we'll come and do this on this one, is we could click exactly the same thing. You can always Control and Z to undo, and then we're going to use the same trick, select loops, and select loop inner region. Oh, if you ever miss a bit, so I'm just going to actually just do this intentionally, and I'm going to Control and E and then subdivide this, which is putting a vertex halfway across this. If you ever haven't selected everything, so we've got that there, and you try this, so select loops and select inner region, it will select everything. So if you find that happening, basically there's a gap, even if it's tiny, in your mesh. A lot of the time this can be vertices that are on top of each other. If I just move that all the way over here, sometimes you can't even see this. So we're going to go into Edge mode, select there, and there, and sometimes Blender will not recognize that these vertices are on top of each other, and if I go to select loops and select in a region, it selects everything because it doesn't recognize this as a loop. The way to deal with this is hit A, M, and then merge by distance, and you can see at the bottom it's removed one vertex because there were two vertices on top of each other, and then I can click, and select loops and select in a region, and now it's worked. Now in this instance, I'm going to do this slightly differently because sometimes that dissolve trick doesn't always work. X, delete faces, and then all I need to do is select all of those and then press F, and then we've got that face. So either way, that's going to work. At this point, actually, we could select all of these and then Control and X, and that should be able to work at that point. So we're going to need to do the same for this wall here. So Object, select, and then change to Edit mode with Tab. You'll just have to hit Tab each time, and you can see this is way more complex because we haven't done that limited dissolve, but this will still work. Select loops, and select inner loop, and Control and X, and it works fine. But either way, I'm going to A, X, and then limited dissolve to clean this up and make this much nicer to deal with. Right, so let's bring these together. We'll give a bit of an example of why I'm merging these together in a second, but what we want to do is make sure that, well, one corner perfectly goes to the other. Now, I'm just going to press G to move these around and get these relatively close to each other. But what we're going to do is use a function called snapBase that's already present in Blender. We're not having to use any add-ons for this. Now to use this, we want to tell Blender what to snap together, and we do this up here in this menu. At the moment I've got a mix of these, so it will snap to vertices, edges and faces. You do that by holding down Shift and you can select multiple things. I just want this to snap to vertices, so I'm just going to click on verts for this, and then G and then B to activate snapBase, and then anytime you go on a vertex, it will create this square. So I'm going to go to there, click there, and we've got this on top of each other. Now, at this point, there's two ways of combining these together, and sometimes one works better than the other. So I'm just going to Shift and D and then Y to make a duplicate of this and talk through your two options. Now, the first is that we can use a Boolean. Now, a Boolean is designed for combining objects together and either having one cut out from the other one or joined to each other. There are other things you can do with this, but that's the basics of it. If you're new to Blender, I've got a video on Booleans. You can have a look at that. It's in the description and it's part of my Blender Basics series, which should get you really nicely started on Blender if you haven't used it before. So we'll start with using a Boolean, but this is going to cause some problems because these edges are so perfectly on top of each other. So we've got an edge here, and then if I just change this one with Alt and Q, this edge is perfectly on top of that edge, and so on all the way down, and the same with the faces. So this could cause some issues. So all I'm going to do is click here, add a modifier, do a Boolean, and then we need to select our object that we want to Boolean to it. So I'm going to use a union, which means they join together. You've also got an intersection and a difference. Click here and click this object, and now it's all combined together. Now there's likely to be some issues here. So what I'm going to do is come up here and apply this, and you'll see you've got your object here, but you've also got, if I press G, the object that's still there underneath it. So it's important that we select this and just press H to hide it so we don't get that getting in the way. Then we're going to check that this is Boolean together in a way that's going to 3D print nicely. Now to do this, we're going to use an add-on, go to Edit and Preferences, go to Get Extensions and type in 3D Print. And you can see this 3D Print toolbox. Now I need to actually update this, which Blender always tells you if you need to do. So I'm just going to click that. But in place of that, you're going to have an Install button, and then that's going to install it if you haven't installed it before. Click Save Preferences, and then you're ready to go. So when you do that, you're going to hit N. You're going to find 3D Print. And then with the object clicked on, you're going to click Check All, and it's going to tell you if there's any issues. And at the moment, we've got 14 non-manifold edges. If I go into any mode and click on this, it tells you where some of those edges are. And actually, these are just minor little things with our file. So actually, this isn't really part of our Boolean. Our Boolean seems to have worked, but sometimes it won't. Let's go into face mode. No, we seem to have had this work out pretty good, which is nice. But just in case it doesn't, just click Check All, Clean Up, and then Make Manifold, and that will delete any issues with this, and we should have this work. Okay, once again, to go into X-ray mode, it's just Shift and Z, and that will go into X-ray mode. So at this point, this is perfect, and we can export this as an STL. The other way of doing this, if you've got a load of problems and you've got some places that are perfectly on top of each other, is we can actually just join them together, and then we can just merge everything manually ourselves. So what we're going to do is just talk through this. What I'm going to do is hit / on my number pad to isolate this one, go into face mode, so for you that would be tab and then 3, select that face, X, and I'm going to delete that face. Tab out into object mode, and then hit the / key again to come out of isolation mode and do exactly the same for this one. Select that face, and then X, and delete that face. / to come out of isolation mode, and then I'm just going to select this, shift select the object that is going to be this more interesting one, and we're going to have this as a center. I'll talk about that in a second. So we want to click, shift click on the one where we want to keep the origin. So we're going to keep the origin of this one, not the origin that's just here. And then I'm going to hit Control and J to join them together. But at this point, these bits have not been joined properly. They're still not perfectly combined. So we're going to use the same trick that we did earlier. A, M, and then merge by distance. Now this might not work perfectly, so sometimes you need to up your merge by distance just the tiniest bit, check all, and there still might be an issue here. So we're just going to click Make Manifold, and it will work out what we need to do, and this will now not have a problem. Let's check all again, and there you go. And the only bit that we really care about here is the non-manifold edges and the bad contiguous edges. Sometimes intersect face is something that we need to deal with, but very rarely. So don't worry about those, just the top two. In object mode, and we've got this good to go. So either of those methods work. I'm just going to delete this one out. Now, I want to make this wider still, so I'm actually going to create this so that this has another wall section over here, and we're going to use the same trick that we did over here. I'm going to go into face mode, select here, Shift and S, cursor to the active, and then from there, in object mode, object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor, and then once again we can change our modifier, add modifier, mirror, and that's doing it on the wrong axis again. Get rid of the X, select the Y, and there we go. So we've now got that going perfectly across both sides. And we just wanted to make sure that that origin was right in the center of that face. And once again, we're going to apply this. So there we go. We've got this set of walls. Now I'm just going to Shift and D and Y to make a copy of this just for a demonstration later. But we also might want to make some damage on this. So what I'm going to do is have like a shell hit here. This is a little bit more complex. So what we're going to do is have to make an object to cut out of this. So Shift and A, Mesh, and you can have pretty much any form of object here. I'm going to click icosphere because it's going to work out a bit better. That's going to be created somewhere over here. We can see that nice and small. That's just S to scale that up, G to bring it over here, and we're going to want to subdivide this up. Now this normally works better with quads, but it'll work perfectly fine with triangles. So we're going to add modifier, type in subdivision surface, and that's going to break this up, and we can do that by more levels to make this rounder and rounder. I'm going to go somewhere there. Now at this point, let's just G and move that up. We probably think that this is a little bit dull, so I'm just going to S to scale it, and then let's Y to sort of scale it in a bit to make this sort of shape. And I want this to look a bit more like broken up concrete, not perfectly flat like this. So what I'm going to do is come to my modifiers, Shift and A, and we're going to do displace. So add a displacement modifier, and this you'll notice has got bigger because what it's done is it's changed, or it's displaced everything by a certain amount, and we can change that with the strength over here. Now we don't want to do that just generically in all directions. We want to add in a texture, so we're going to come here and add a new texture, and at the moment it's created the texture but it hasn't done anything with it. To do that we need to do this in the texture tab, which is just here. We're going to click type. I'm going to use clouds, which I find really nice for this, and you can see this has sort of distorted it in this way. And we can always come back to our modifier, so you have to jump between these two a little bit, and I'm going to down the strength to make this a little bit smaller. There we go, something maybe like that. We can also change the size of this. That's in our texture properties. You've got size just here, so I can make that bigger so the texture is larger, or I can make it smaller and finer in terms of the damage. Now if at any point you find this is too pixelated, you can always come here and change your subdivision surface and put the levels a bit higher, but don't go too high. It's going to really slow down your computer by quite a lot. So if you're finding this is a bit much, that's the thing to limit. And I'm going to go somewhere about there. That's just G to move this into approximately the right place. I'm going to go there, something like that. And we're going to use a Boolean again. So I'm going to click this. So the object that we want to apply the Boolean to, add modifiers, Boolean. This time we want a difference Boolean because we want to take something away. Click on our pipette, click on this object, and it has done this, but again it keeps the object on top of it. So click on it and press H. Oh, and it hasn't quite liked this. So sometimes the exact causes some problems. So I'm going to click fast, and there we go, it has worked. So sometimes you'll have an issue with one of these, and it's worth clicking between the two different solvers. If this doesn't work at all, there's a problem with the geometry of your object, and sometimes that happens with STLs. This is one of the reasons why I'm using the war scenery STLs. They're generally really good, and I've had very little problems modifying them in the past using the few tricks that I showed you earlier. Now we can always bring back the icosphere, you can see that here, and I can actually move this around. So G, it's going to be a bit slower because the computer has to work everything out as I'm going, and then hide it again, and you can see it's now in that hidden location. If I want to export this, we just click, edit, export, STL, and we want to click selection only, so it's only exporting the thing that we've got selected, and I'm going to call this combined walls damaged. Click export, and that'll be good to go. Now I'm actually going to do this one without it being damaged, just so I can demonstrate one other reason why we might want to do this. So file, export, STL, and again, we're just going to have combined walls, and I'm going to get rid of the damaged. Make sure selection only is on, and export the STL. Now, just to demonstrate why we want to do this, I've set up 8 of these on a build plate where we've got them joined together. Now, why this is really useful, if I come to my preview, and we've come down some of the areas, is that because these are joined together, you'll notice that where they would be joined, you've got this infill. Now, what that means is that this is going to be faster to print. So in this instance, these 8 is going to take 23 hours and 10 minutes to print. Whereas if I come to this, we've got exactly the same number of wall sections, but they're divided. If we go to our preview, what we've got to do is create more walls. Hang on, these are walls. Right, that's annoying to explain. So the orange and the yellow bits are the outer walls. So you can see that we get these outer walls just here, which take longer to print. So you can see that these 8 exactly the same, or made up of exactly the same parts, is going to take 1 day and 2 hours. So we're adding on a number of hours to do this. And while that's not a huge amount, it can make a difference. And personally, I actually think it's better to have them all together because, well, it just makes it more convenient to move them around and set them up, and you're less likely to knock them. So for me, this is just a really nice option, and it gives us some really good ways of creating something that's a little bit more unique and has more variation once you start getting into that damage. Anyway, hopefully that was a useful video. Gives you some ideas of things you can do with some STLs. If you thought the video was useful, please hit that like button, it helps spread it around, which is always really appreciated. If you want to see more tricks with Blender or 3D printing, hit the subscribe button. And if you're interested in these walls again, that is part of the Kickstarter from War Scenery, or if you're seeing this after that's finished, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but you will be able to get them on their website. Have a great day, guys.